Hello, I'm going live a little early to see if you guys can hear me. Since I keep having issues on whether or not people can hear me. Can anybody hear me? Somebody type and let me know if you can hear me. Yay, Kate, thank you. Somebody telling me, and Christopher, thank you so much for letting me know that you can hear me. I decided to dress up for everybody today. This is my Team Brendan hoodie that Brendan actually designed this hoodie. Let me show you. So it says Team Brendan, the complete and innocent. And then it also has my name on it because Brendan asked for those of us who had these made to have our name on it and be close to our heart. And then the back of it, if you can see it. So Amy and I, see, Team Brendan, Amy and I and our Jeffs wore these when we went to court for Brendan at the 7th Circuit in Chicago. And that was on Valentine's Day, which obviously in February in Chicago, it's cold. And so we wore these as our coats. And then news talked to us outside, and they took a shot of us walking away. And from that, Carla and her minions attack us and talk about how we're trash and that we went to court dressed like that. Again, Brendan designed this. This was all his idea. Orange is one of his favorite colors. Orange and green are his favorite colors. He wanted it to look this way. He wanted it to say the complete and innocent. And we wore them so when the news filmed us afterwards, Brendan sees that and could see it. There's also one of these that was made for Brendan, too. So we didn't wear these into court. They were our coat. And so it's just another example of Carla and her minions wanting to attack Amy and I for any reason whatsoever. But as I've said previously while talking on here, I've been rewatching Making a Murderer, and I find it very interesting when you see Carla in court, the few times she was there, because there's many times you watch and she's not there. I know she'll make it, she works so much, which is also a lie. She's wearing a hoodie. So I find it really interesting that we're bad for wearing a coat in February that Brendan made to Brendan's hearing, but she wore hoodies to court for no reason because she's a slob. Anyway, there's that. So again, for people new on here, Team Brendan, I think they're cute. Only question, Sean, any info on the state's response to KZ's motion? I literally just found out about that while going live here. So the moderators of Stephen Avery Project are getting that and getting it posted. And that's them messaging me right now about it. So they're getting it posted. I don't know anything about it other than that. I haven't had a chance to read that. So I don't know what's in it, or if this was just just saying that it's been, that they filed, that we don't have what's actually in it yet. I don't know. So I guess I'll find out after this. So, all right. And now I can unzip this because it is summer and I just put this on to make a point. What do you guys want to talk about? Since we talked last, the Queso 2 reports came out. We have them posted in the Gossip group, and it's also on the Stephen Avery Project page and group. And then I also wrote up a summary of the highlights of it. So it's something that I find very interesting, that Barb will not talk to Kathleen Zellner, who is the only shot Brendan has to come home. So she won't talk to Kathleen, but she'll continually talk to the law enforcement that put her son in prison. I find that interesting. What else is, so if anybody's got any questions on the Queso filings, go ahead and post those and I'll answer what I can. What else has happened this week? We're having more drama from Carla Chase. For those of you who don't know who Carla Chase is, she is Stephen's niece, Brendan's cousin, who named herself the family spokesperson, even though both Brendan and Stephen have told her multiple times that she doesn't speak for them, and they want any Facebook page, group, Twitter, anything she has that has their name on it, they want it taken off, and she won't listen. So Stephen wanted a group that was only him, and Carla wouldn't do that. And so some of the women who speak with Stephen and visit Stephen started a Facebook group in the last 2 weeks, I think. So I can't remember what it's called. It's something about the truth always wins, and it's got Stephen Avery in it. Sandra is one of the admins from that. Sandra, if you've watched Making a Murderer, she's on there. So Sandra is somebody who has supported Stephen from before this case was famous. So she's always been there for Stephen. She's not there for fame or fortune and all that kind of stuff. And then Shaz is really the person who put that group together. And Shaz is somebody also who is here for Stephen, is a true supporter. The other two that are involved in that group, Shaz may trust them, but no, they're not good in supporting Stephen, so I won't even discuss them. So Carla keeps trying to take shots at that group and the people that run it. She is now trying to pretend like she had a group the last 2 years that was just for Stephen. She's tweeted about that. It's actually somebody else's group that, as usual, Carla tries to take control over it, like it was hers and all this. And so she wants this to be proof to Stephen that, see, I had a group just for you all along. It's total bullshit. So, as usual, drama. Is this not scrolling down? Oh, it wasn't scrolling down. Should tell me questions there. They submitted 8 exhibits. Okay, good. Just finished the show, and all I know is Steve has a new lawyer now. Can you give a general update on what's happened since then? Oh boy, Annette. what's happened since then. Yes, Stephen's lawyer is Kathleen Zellner. She is the lawyer that if you are wrongfully convicted, you want Kathleen Zellner. She only takes cases that she believes the person is innocent. And she is a force to be reckoned with. And it's just going through all the steps in our stupid judicial system. Kathleen says it typically takes her 15 years to free somebody that's wrongfully convicted. So, and she's only had Stephen's case since Making a Murderer came out. She took the case January after Making a Murderer had come out in December of 2015. So she took his case January of 2016. So it's this long, our system sucks on how long everything takes. And she filed a week, 2 weeks ago. And now just before going live here, the state's, excuse me, I've had a cough forever. The state's response just came out. And what Kathleen is, well, Kathleen wants a full exoneration because she knows that he is innocent, but you're trying for a new trial based on the Brady and Denny. But what happened in pretrial is that Stephen's defense was not allowed to suggest any other suspects unless they had a motive. So that's why you didn't hear anything about Scott and Brendan and Ryan Hilgas and Scott Blodorn and all these other people that, you know, there is a motive for them, but they played it up like there wasn't. So Kathleen now is going with showing that the state covered up that they knew there was motive for other people and trying to get a new trial from that. Lori, who was the convo between Scott T and Stephen Avery project that was posted today? What was that all about? So Lori, you talking about the screenshots that got posted today? That was a conversation between Scott and I. Somebody else was talking about the Sikaki letter. And they were questioning on Scott's intelligence level and if he was somebody who would be right like what was in the Sikaki letter. So I looked up my last messages with Scott and posted those so people could see how Scott writes. You know, so you know, he's not, he's an idiot, but he's not illiterate. And you'd have to ask me more specifically what was that all about because I posted there's a whole bunch of topics in there. So shoot me questions on that and I'll answer. How long did the state have to reply to KZ's latest filings? I always hear 60 days on everything, that you have 60 days. I cringe every time, Sean, that I see you have a question posted because you are way smarter than I, and I'm I don't think I can answer your questions a lot of times. What is a day like for Stephen in prison? Is he segregated? Does he have friends in there? How is he treated by the inmates and staff? Does he get to watch TV, etc.? Stephen works in the kitchen. He says it gets really hot in the kitchen. And he jokes that he hopes that the kitchen will help him sweat off some weight. He's never spoken about any trouble with any inmates or anything like that with me. He does get to watch some TV. He seems to be fine. But at least with my interaction with Stephen, it's hard to know because he's always so positive about everything. So I don't know if he has any problems or not because he may not think that it's a problem. But yeah, so it's just work in the kitchen and he does a lot of research on his own case. and then talking with his lawyer, talking with his supporters. He typically calls supporters on Wednesdays, and Sandra goes and visits him usually on Fridays. She was there today. Family goes on the weekend. So that's pretty much Steve. And he reads your letters. I say this all the time. Stephen doesn't like to write letters. It's just not something he enjoys doing. It has nothing to do with the supporters. It's not a negative. It's just he doesn't want to write, so he doesn't write very many letters back, but that shouldn't deter people from sending him a letter, because you're doing it because, you want to brighten his day. So continue sending him letters. He likes to hear about, you, where you live, what you like. You could send him pictures of you or where you live or your pets, or, he loves cars. Send him pictures of your cars, So let me scroll down. I've read somewhere the state have submitted something in court today. Yep. The moderators are looking into it, and we'll post when they do. Sean says he'll message me the difficult ones, so I have time to research. Are his parents in good health? I'm hoping this gets resolved before they pass. They're getting older. The last time I talked to Stephen, and we talked about this last week when I did a live, Stephen says his dad works way too much and really should take a break. But that's not how he is. He wants to work and likes to keep active. So knock on wood, that Stephen will be out soon to be with his parents. Do I know Brendan's day-to-day? Pretty much the same. I've been cut off from Brendan, so I don't know what his day-to-day is like. But I know he watches a lot of TV, and he tries to work out. He's got back then he had a buddy inmate who would help him work out and stuff. So I don't know if he has a job. What was Supreme Court decision? Jason, do you mean for Brendan? The Supreme Court for Brendan turned down reviewing the case. So Brendan's kind of in a standstill right now. Really, Brendan's best hope is Kathleen Zellner. If Kathleen is able to prove who really committed this alleged crime, and I know people get upset when I say alleged, and they want to say it's disrespectful to Teresa Halbach's family to say alleged crime, but there's just so much shadiness around this that I don't know if there's proof that that's even Teresa's remains that they found at the salvage yard. So that's why I'll say alleged. And it is nothing against Teresa Halbach's family at all, and is everything against the shady law enforcement. And that was something you saw if you read the CASO reports, that they were talking about Carmen Bootwell. I don't know a whole lot about that case. A couple of the moderators from Stephen Avery Project, they follow that case just as hard as they do Stephen's. So if you have questions about the Carmen Bootwell case, you can post that on the page, make a thread for it, and have them answer your questions on Carmen. But Carmen is a distant relative of Teresa's, and she died from alleged drug overdose right around the time of Teresa's disappearance. And the only thing that we know of the bones that were recovered at Stevens is that the DNA was consistent with a female in Teresa Halbach mother Karen's maternal line. So that doesn't mean it would be Teresa. It could have been Carmen Bootwell. So in the CASO report that they took Detering, I don't know how you say his name, out of retirement when he talked to Barb and Scott, they were talking about how they could turn over the Bootwell family's phone number and that the Bootwells would be willing to turn over some of her ashes for testing. So, but again, I don't keep up with that case. I don't know all the details on it. So if you're interested, make a post either in Stephen Avery Project or Gossip. It's the same moderators for both, and they can answer your questions on that. What about the state's response to KZ? Jason, I just found out about that prior to going live here, so I haven't read it and I don't know anything about it at this time. So Stephen Avery Project moderators are looking for it and to get the information for it. Jen says $1 million to disappear is a lot less than Stephen would have gotten if he had been able to hold them responsible for the first wrongful conviction. Right, Jen. And that's something that people do propose, is that Teresa Hallback is alive and was paid to disappear. I don't believe that, but it's a theory. So, and again, there's no disrespect meant to the Hallback family. It's just, if law enforcement wasn't so shady, you wouldn't go to those lengths of thinking of all these different cloak and dagger things, how could that ever be possible? Well, how did a key all of a sudden appear in Stephen's room after how many searches? And how did a bullet appear in the garage after how many searches? So you have to question everything. All right, no other question yet. Something I started yesterday, Stephen Avery Project, we do have a Twitter, but I'm not on. I don't use Twitter very much. I don't like Twitter. It took me forever to go from MySpace to Facebook, and I talk way too much for what you're limited to on Twitter, but I know that's where everybody is. So I'm trying to start using our Twitter. So it's at Bravery SAP. So you could follow on Twitter, and I'll try and get better at posting stuff on there too. What else? I'm just kind of going off into different areas as I'm waiting for questions to come in. I can give you all an exclusive that's not with Stephen's case, but is with another case of Kathleen Zellner's. Melissa Kaluzinski, that's a case that we also advocate for that's here in Illinois. Her dad is fighting for his daughter so hard, and he had me come over yesterday because he wanted to do a Facebook Live to expose some stuff that people have never heard before. And so he did that. And now today he came up with another idea. He wants us to do a Facebook Live next week where he will have Melissa on the phone, and the supporters will be able to talk and ask Melissa questions on Facebook Live. I was uncomfortable with that. I understand it's a great idea, but I don't want anything to happen to Melissa from doing that, because I know from prior experience with Brendan and people tricking Brendan into talking to them where they recorded it and posted it on YouTube, that he could be punished for that. I know Dr. Phil tricked Stephen He thought he was just calling Lynn and didn't know he was calling into the Dr. Phil show and going live. So I told Paul that he needed to check with Kathleen first, and she gave her blessing. So sometime next week, right now it's tentatively going to be Wednesday around 4 p.m. We'll do a Facebook Live where Paul will have Melissa on the phone and supporters can ask her questions and such, but not about the case. You can't talk about the case at all. You can just talk about Melissa and, how is she, and, those kinds of things. You can't do anything that'll possibly jeopardize her case. Jen, correct. If they weren't so shady, there wouldn't be any doubt. They planted the seed of doubt and it has grown into a million theories. I'm with you. Sean, have you ever asked Stephen why he didn't take his own advice, never talk to cops? Even innocent people should exercise their Miranda rights every time. Because he's a talker. He talked to one of his lawyers too at the time, and they told him don't talk to them, and he still did it. I think it's because he knows he's innocent, and I think it would also have to do with they really couldn't do this to me a second time. Nobody would believe it. So I think he just thought if I just say that, I'll be on my way. So hopefully when he goes home this time, he's learned his lesson and won't ever talk to the cop. And it's something, everybody needs to know. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, how much money you have, what your race is, religion, sexual orientation. Nobody for any reason should talk to police without having an attorney present. And it's not an attack on the police. It's just you never know. So you need to protect yourself. What's my theory, Tammy? My theory, I talked about this last week. I believe that Scott and Bobby killed her. Either Scott killed her and Bobby helped, or no, Bobby killed her and then Scott helped with the cover up, or they did it both together. I believe Bobby so he followed Teresa when she left. She had either pulled over to take a picture or he got her to pull over with the premise of a hustle shot, meaning it's a spur of the moment. I want to sell my vehicle, take this picture, and then I'll contact Auto Trader and set everything up, and you'll already have the picture taken. And then hit her in the head and threw her in the back of her car. And then whatever happened to her from there, I'm not Ken Kratz, so I'm not going to speculate on a rape and of this and of that. There's no evidence on what happened to Teresa, either if you think Scott and Bobby did it, or even if you think Stephen and Brendan did it. There's absolutely no evidence of what happened to Teresa. All you know is nobody has seen Teresa since Halloween of 2005. And so then I believe that Scott took her to work, to the aluminum smelter, and that's that. Have I thought of using Periscope? No, I haven't, because just like I was talking about not liking Twitter, because Facebook's what I know. I don't know anything about Periscope. I'm old and resist change and things that are new and scary to me. So I know I've heard of Periscope and I've seen people use it before, but I don't know anything about it. Do you have somewhere that we can read about the case if we are not familiar with her case? Oh, with Melissa Kaluzinski? Her Facebook group is called Justice for Melissa. So, and maybe if one of the moderators are here, they can post a link to it in here for you guys. And then her case was actually covered by 48 Hours, the CBS show. So there's 2 different episodes. The first one is called Blaming Melissa. So you can search that. They've got it uploaded to YouTube. So Blaming Melissa, and then The Fight for Melissa. And Kathleen Zellner is on there. So you can find out from the case from there and at the Justice for Melissa Facebook page. And thumbs up to you, Sean. Have you asked Stephen where he will go once he's released? Yes, I've talked with him about it because I beg him to leave Wisconsin. And he won't leave Wisconsin if his parents won't leave. So he does have some places he would like to go. I won't say because I hope he'll be able to live a quiet life. So unless Stephen wants to tell people where he's at, but it will be up to his parents because that's all he wants is to live, with his parents and go fishing and work on cars. No more questions right now. So we've got, I'm just stammering here now. Stephen Avery Project, the page is where we post just the information on the case. We don't really get too into it. Stephen Avery Project group is where we can talk more openly about the case, and then we'll also discuss Brendan's case in there. We don't talk about Brendan's case on the page. We keep that just for Stephen's case. And then we have this Making a Murderer Gossip, MaM Gossip, where that's when we'll talk about how shitty the family is and all the stuff that they've been doing. How's Stephen Brendan's spirits? I don't have any contact with Brendan, so I don't know how Brendan is doing. Stephen is always jolly. He's always laughing and making jokes and in the greatest of moods. So Stephen's always positive. He always believes just around the corner he's going home. So I don't know where he needs to bottle that up and sell that, that, because if anybody should be Debbie Downer and Negative Nancy or, whatever you want to call it, it should be Stephen with everything that's been done to that man. And no, he's, always keeping the faith that things are going to work out because he knows he's innocent. Have I watched The Staircase? If so, do you think that man was guilty or not guilty? So many people think he's not guilty. I think he's guilty. I think that he is so guilty. And yes, I know it's, oh, look, Stephen had 2 things happen to him and he's not guilty. And this guy's got 2 women that die falling down the stairs. I'm sorry, the guy is guilty. And it wasn't an owl. If he needs my help in leaving Wisconsin, would you help him? I would help him however he needs. That's, that's, I call myself, so I'm a self-named advocate for the wrongfully accused. So anything Stephen needs, if it's within my power, I would do it. So I'm happy to help. And what is weird in this is the other 2 cases that I help with, the Melissa Kaluzinski case and then Kent Pellegrini. And those are both Kathleen Zellner cases. Those families are nothing like the Avery family. They have been so loving, so warm. They don't treat supporters like property and form these cliques and this drama and all this. They're happy with people who support their loved ones that are in prison. So it's and I was warned early on too that to not get discouraged with advocating for wrongfully accused after what the Avery family has done to me personally, because there's families aren't like that. So the Pellegrinis and the Kaluzinskis are the complete opposite of the Avery families. And I actually just visited Kent in his prison the other day. And it's actually my first experience in going to a prison. And Kent wanted to know all about Melissa's case and Stephen's case. And, and they formed a little family, especially the Pellegrinis and the Kaluzinskis, and they support each other. And I had tried to bring Avery family early on, so that this is a great support system to have, these other families that are going through it. And the Avery family will have none of it because they want to be the stars of the show and don't want to share billing with anybody else. Oops, I scrolled up too high. I gotta go back down. Brandy, the moderators of Stephen Avery Project are looking for it. So as soon as they can find the new docs that just came out as I was going live, I don't know if they're even available yet or if it was just a filing saying that they filed and there isn't access to the actual papers yet, but they're looking for it. And as soon as we have it, it'll get posted in both Gossip and the Stephen Avery Project page and group. What is all this talk about Stephen and where he is living? I'm so lost. That somebody asked a question if Stephen's ever talked about when he's released from prison, where would he live? If he's talked about where he wants to live. That's all that is. Is it possible that Bobby and Scott had Brendan help them clean up evidence without anyone else knowing, even Barb? Possible? Yes, I guess, technically, but no. In the little bit of time that I knew Brendan, that I spoke to him on the phone and letters from Brendan, that kid's not capable of lying. There's no way that kid would have been able to cover this up. Any involvement whatsoever. It would eat that kid alive, and he just wouldn't be able to do it. You would know he was lying. I do not think for a second that Brendan has any involvement in this at all. None. And I even give Barb the benefit of the doubt that I don't think Barb knew then. I don't even think Barb knew when the trial happened. I think she might have been suspicious of something, because obviously she was trying to cover up what was on that computer. So she might have had suspicions, but not of Brendan. So no, Brendan, no way had anything to do with this. I'm sorry, but Stephen's parents are the only good people in his family. The rest of them are pure vultures. I concur. Alan and Dolores, I've never met Alan. I've met Dolores once, but I only talked to her for like 10 minutes. It was, if you've ever watched the video that I've posted of what the bus driver could or couldn't see, I had walked, I walked all the way down from the bus stop that's at the Avery's mailboxes. I went down to in front of what was Barb's trailer at that time, but when I was there, Chuck is who lives there now. Barb and Steven's brother Chuck. And so I stood down there with a bright orange shirt and a camera. And then, my partner was down at the mailbox with his camera, and he zoomed in on me, and then he zoomed out so you would be able to see. There's no possible way a bus driver at the bus stop could see Teresa taking pictures. And when I walked back down to the bus stop, Dolores was driving around in her golf cart, and so I had stopped and talked to her. So I don't know her. I spoke to her for 10 minutes. But they're the ones that have always been there for Steven and have always believed in him 100%. Nobody else in that family has supported Steven from day one. They'll flip and flop, say he's guilty, say he's innocent. So, yeah. So Kayla was lying in your opinion. Yes, Kayla was lying, and Kayla admits she was lying. And I guess that's something if need be. I used to be friendly with Kayla, so I have a whole bunch of messages of my back and forth with Kayla. The girl's got a lot of guilt for what she did to Brendan. So she lied, and I do give her props for, yes, Megan, Kayla did admit on the stand that she lied. And that took guts to do when you're in front of all those people. And, and she was 14 at the time, and cameras and all that for her to admit she lied there. So, but yes, Kayla lied about Brendan because she wanted attention. Joanne says, some say she was just redacting to help him. It's so weird. Yes, guilters will say that because they look for anything to try and show that Steven and Brendan are guilty. But for her to lie on the stand, that would be much harder for her to get away with than she just lies in a interrogation room. So, and the thing that I say all the time is it's easy to tell the truth because the truth actually happened. So your story doesn't change. Lies are hard to remember. What time did you say you were at such and such? And what color was this? Because you're lying. So Kayla, the same as Brendan, if she's lying, you're going to be able to tell. She's, again, not an attack, but she's not the smartest thing in the world. And you'd be able to tell. So Kayla lied about Brendan. Any theory on why she lied? Because she wanted attention, Joanne. And it's really sad. But when you know what they say, I don't, if you're a parent or work with children, it's attention is attention, whether it's positive or negative. So she just wanted attention. And so she made this up. So she got some attention and people were talking to her, and it's sad. She, but again, she was only 14 at the time. Oh, now I got to take this fully off because I'm roasting. What time we at? Only 5:37. Questions. I just watched Brendan's confessions. Where do you think he came up with all of this? Wiegert and Fassbender. Because even when you watch the one of, here's what I learned from Stephen Drizzen. And I'm really bad with numbers. in any way, shape, or form. But I believe I can't remember the dates. So Brendan was questioned on like February 27th and then February 28th, but then not on March 1st and then again on March 2nd. And so what happened on March 1st that they had to bring Brendan back in is that's when the magic bullet was found. That wasn't in that garage over all those searches. All of a sudden, they're able to find a bullet without any dust. When you see everything else in that garage, it's all dusty and all the, so they're able to find that bullet casing and find allegedly Teresa's DNA on it. So they had to bring Brendan back in because Brendan being Stephen's alibi, they needed Brendan to say that she was shot. And so they were leading him to it, what else, Brendan? What else happened? And Brendan had no clue, so as you'll hear on when he talks to his mother afterwards, and I was guessing, that's exactly what he was doing. So, and what Stephen Drizzen says is this is another way that they should have blown the case is they're the ones that then tell Brendan, because they're like, what happened to her head? And Brendan's like, cut her hair, punched her. Even when you watch that, even if you don't know Brendan, you've never spoken to Brendan, but you can tell by the cadence and how his voice sounds, he's guessing, cut her hair, punched her. And so then one of them, I never remember which one is which of Fassbender and Uyghur, Dumb and Dumber. Okay, I'm just going to come out and say this. Who shot her? Stephen? And again, that same thing. And of course, Brendan's going to say Stephen. Is Stephen going to say, I shot her? No, he's not going to say that he's the one that shot her. So, and he knows that's what they're looking for. So, all of this came from every single thing that Brendan said came from Fassbender, Uyghur, or the evil Michael O'Kelly, Len Kaczynski's guy that was having Brendan do that form that even starts off the very beginning of it is, are you sorry for what you did or are you not sorry for what you did? So there was nothing on this paper that even said, I did not do this, I am innocent. And he's working for Brendan. This is Brendan's defense team. And you're wanting him to sign a paper of either he's sorry or not sorry for what he did. And so it was Michael O'Kelly with the, here, draw over here how she was chained to the bed and do it like this and all this. Everything Brendan said was implanted in him. And yes, he was interrogated multiple times. There's also interrogations that we don't have because they didn't record it. So you don't know, nobody knows what was said there. But so Brendan, he was given all this stuff to say. Will you have time to write a reaction to the state's response this weekend, please, Jax? We'll see. I may not be able to get to it this weekend. I've got a full plate because I'm really active in my area politically, and I've got a bunch of events to do this weekend. And then Sunday night, I'm going to see Foo Fighters at Wrigley Field. Foo Fighters, my all-time favorite band. So I don't know if I'll have time to do it this weekend, but I'll try. I'll definitely write something up. The terrible event involved family they didn't consider at the time. Now that we have a feel the stepdad was involved in the brother, how far-fetched is it to believe he was protecting his brother, possibly at the encouragement of his mother? That would explain the riff his mom had with Stephen on the phone. I understand people thinking that. I mean, it's reasonable to think that. Just for me personally, and the little bit that I know, Brendan would not be able to cover this up. He wouldn't be able to. He can't. I'm not a religious person, and now here I go, just like last time, I'm going to start tearing up. Brendan's a really good soul. He's a sweet, sweet kid. And there's just no way he would be able to cover this up. The riff she had with Steven on the phone, if you're referring to the one just last year with Scott in the background, that's because a Zellner filing came out. And so she was pissed off about that. So that's what that is. What's your theory on how Steven's blood got into Teresa's car? I still think police planted it. I know in Zellner's last motion, it's saying Bobby, but I still think it's police. I think police are who planted everything. I think police, did the key, did the magic bullet. I think the police planted the RAV4 there. I think the blood was police. I can't remember all the people's names in this case, but when the cop called in about finding her vehicle and ran the license plate, my hair and my body stood up. Yeah, that's Andrew Colborn. And I think, too, when you watch him on the stand, you can tell, in my opinion, that he's like, oh, shit. I think they were this close to getting him on there. I think that, as we have in Zellner's last filing, that 2 different people said they saw the RAV4 parked near a dam on November 3rd and 4th. When Colborn was calling in those plates, it was November 3rd, right? Again, I'm bad with numbers. So I believe since somebody had reported they saw the RAV at the dam, that Colborn was the one dispatched to go check it out. This is also why he did not use a police radio when he called back in. He used his personal cell phone, trying to cover it up some more. I do not know. I believe it's Sean who's brought this up to me several times, because again, Sean's got the best questions of why hasn't anybody looked at Andrew Colburn's cell phone records and see where his phone pings off of at that time. So yeah, I think he was notified about the RAV4, went there to check it out, called it in to double check that was the vehicle. It was, and then the plant was on. So that's when they drove the RAV4 into the salvage yard through the quarry. Right, Kim. Stephen in the last filing says Bobby planted the blood, that he said that there were pry marks on the back door of his trailer when he went to the store and had dripped blood in the bathroom that he hadn't cleaned up. While Bobby is not stupid, he, I don't know if Bobby would be smart enough to do that with the blood. But then again, when you look at the computer that Barb tried to reformat, or whatever they keep calling it, one of the files on there is DNA. So maybe he was looking that up. How did police find her car? Was it luck, or did someone call it in? Tanya, are you talking about the dam? Find it at the dam? That's because somebody contacted both law enforcement and Scott Toddick and said that they saw the RAV4 by the dam. And Taylor, yes, there is the propane truck driver said he saw the car leave that day. And there were a couple other people that said they saw the car leave. With the info coming out about the computer and what was on it, do you think the police suspected Bobby but decided to ignore what was on the computer? And why has nothing been done about this? Here's my theory is, I don't know, you tell me, am I giving too many people the benefit of the doubt? But I think initially when law enforcement got involved in this, they thought Stephen was guilty. And they thought they were framing a guilty man. That they were fearful because of what they did to him previously and the depositions that were going on currently, that they thought it was going to be really hard to prove their case against Stephen. So I think it may have started with them framing a guilty man, or who they thought was a guilty man. And once they got that ball rolling, they now weren't going to shift course, and because it was also to their benefit with the $36 million suit. So I believe Bobby and Scott were then used by law enforcement to help out with their proving their theory. And so it was used against Bobby, all that stuff on there that, now you need to say this, and the fire was, with Scott, the fire was this high, and Bobby saw this and that. So I think law enforcement used that against him. Were any property searches done before family was removed from the property? Stephen allowed them in at one point, right? And then was it Earl that allowed them there? But they took family out right away, and the family was out for a long time, which isn't typical on these. So you can see too, you can look up the logs of who came in and out of the property each day. You can find them on StephenAveryCase.org. That is a very good website to go. That Skip Top is who started that and got all the early documents, exhibits, everything. So if you just want to read the case, you don't want to read my slant on it or anybody else's slant on it, you just want to read case filings and exhibits and see all that stuff, go to StephenAveryCase.org. So the logs are on there, and that's where you can also see that Ryan Hilgas, so Teresa's ex-boyfriend, and Scott Blodorn, her roommate, and even Michael Halbach, her brother, are logged in and out during that search. Why those people were allowed in the crime scene on those days, I don't know. And then you also have a Ryan Kilgus who is logged in on days. And so that's something in the latest CASO filings where they talk to Ryan Hilgas, and he just says that happens all the time. It's a common mistake that people mishear Hilgas and for Kilgus. So he's claiming he wasn't using a fake name to get on there. Has Bobby had a clean history since then, or has there been offenses committed by him? I haven't heard of any offenses by him, but you can look him up. You can go to the and I don't know if we've looked at some point for it or not. Yeah, that's something people should look into. I know he's married, and he's got kids, and he changed his name on Facebook to just say Bobby Anthony. Doesn't say Dassey on there. So he's got pictures of himself hunting and pictures of his kids. And there's a picture of him and Mike Osmondson, who is his hunting buddy that may or may not also be involved in all of this. He's the one with the whole Stephen was joking, want to help me get rid of a body guy. So there's pictures of Bobby with him that are current, like from last year. So he still talks to that guy. Who do I believe killed Teresa? I believe it was Bobby / Scott. I don't know if Scott was a part of the killing or just a cover up, but I believe Bobby is who killed her. Interesting read about the old neighbor seeing the white truck and possibly the RAV4 driving on the Avery property just before it was found by Pam of God Sturm. Who do you think owned the white truck, and how is it possible he wasn't investigated by law enforcement and or investigators? I have been told at that time that Mike Osmondson had a white Jeep. So the guy I was just talking about. So I always thought before that it would be somebody in law enforcement, because I feel it's law enforcement that planted the RAV4 there. But I also think that law enforcement got the help of Ryan Hilgas, Scott Blodorn / Michael Hallbach in planting that. And for those guys, I think, like I said before with the cops, it was, they thought they were framing a guilty man. And I think that's how Pam of God, who is a relative of Teresa Hallbach, was able to find the vehicle so fast. I believe she was told where to go there to find the vehicle. None of that makes any sense. Like, even when you read the latest CASO filings where it's Pam Sturm. So Ryan Hilgas was manning the search party and so he was the one that assigned people where to go and gave them all the stuff. Well, Pam Sturm comes late, right? So she's there after everybody's gone. And where does she get assigned to go? Avery property, which they all go, well, obviously we're going to look there. It was one of the last places that she was seen. So if that was such an important spot, why wouldn't it have been assigned to somebody right away leaving on a search party? Why was it like an afterthought? Oh, here comes these two women. Let's give it to them now. And why are they the only ones given a direct line to call the sheriff and a camera? So, and then with, I've got that video posted too, showing that it took me, I parked at the office of the salvage yard and then walked the path that I was told by the family of where Pam walked. And I was walking probably pretty fast because I don't remember what month it was that I was there. I want to say it was March at that time. So it was cold. It was really cold. So I was walking fast and I went directly from the office to where the RAV was found. I wasn't looking at any vehicles for any, wasn't looking at the cars because I'm looking for my distant cousin's vehicle. I wasn't peering in cars to, as Pam Sturm testified to, that she was looking for a body. So I didn't look at anything. I went straight from point A to point B. And it took me 10 minutes to get there, walking fast. So Pam Sturm going there where she was nervous. She was scared for her safety, for being there. And they're searching cars, was able to get there in 20. Nope, not possible. No way. And also that road, even then in October, and I don't know what the leave situation would have been there on Halloween, but that road where that car is found is pretty secluded from the salvage yard because there's a pond and then the road, and then there's also trees all around it. It wouldn't be an obvious thing you would see. And also back at that time, there were way more cars at the lot than there was when I was there, because they're not getting the business that they used to. So there isn't as many cars there. And also at that time, the car crusher was there and a stack of crushed cars. So no, Pam of Sturm, or Pam of God Sturm, needs to be fearful of her God because she's a liar. Has Bobby ever visited Brendan in jail? Yes, he has, but not very often. If Bobby killed her, do you think Bobby planted evidence such as Teresa's belongings in the burn barrel? I think law enforcement planted everything. I don't think Bobby did. I think Bobby and Scott were not trying to pin anything on Stephen. They were taking everything off the property. So I think they left her in the quarry, and the police found the stuff in the quarry and then planted it at Stevens. Because also something you have to remember too is the stuff was found in all these different burn barrels. Because up there, they don't have garbage pickup. So they either take their stuff to the dump or they burn it. So they burn what they can. And so you have a million different burn barrels. And so some of the stuff was found in Barb's burn barrel. So why would Bobby put stuff in his own burn barrel? That just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's law enforcement that planted all that stuff. Do you know Bobby and Scott's reaction or behavior since Zellner's motion? I don't know it. I just assume temper tantrum, at least from Scott. Scott's a temper tantrum. He's a walking temper tantrum. I don't know Bobby at all. I never met Bobby. So I have no idea how Bobby's response would be. But Scott is a temper tantrum and screaming and yelling, and that would probably then be if Barb was talking to Stephen on the phone, like the recorded call we've all heard, that would be another temper tantrum from Scott threatening to kill Stephen because he's a big tough guy. And that's something to know about Scott. Scott's really tough when it comes to women or children. He's not tough when it comes to other men because he said some awful things about Amy, and he would say awful things to Amy. Scott knows Amy's husband, and Amy's husband put Scott in check. And as soon as Amy's husband gets involved, Scott whimpers like a little puppy. And not a puppy like Bobby's puppy that scratches his back where the scratches are wider than a puppy's claws would be. So Scott's a little pussy when it comes to men. Caught up with all the questions. And we're at 6 o'clock. We got a half hour to go. There's only 15 people on right now, which Carla's people who have spies in here then have to post and go, oh, only 15 people, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. I don't know all the details of the drama that happened before, but are you still in contact or have a friendship with any of the Avery family anymore? No, I'm not in any contact with any of the Avery family. I never met Earl. I met Chuck. Chuck was really nice to me. And then after the split, Chuck sent me a threatening message telling me that I shouldn't leave my home for a while. Don't know what he exactly meant about all that. And then I don't have any contact with Barb or Carla. They hate my guts. And Dolores and Alan are on social media or anything like that. So But I would gladly help Dolores and Alan in any way they needed as well. I've even told Stephen on the phone, if they need a ride to the prison, I'll come and pick them up and take them to visit with Stephen. Because I actually live closer to the prison from Illinois than they do in Wisconsin. But it's still something I would drive up there and pick them up and take them there if need be. How do you think Brendan knew about Teresa's items being thrown in the burn barrel? Because anything Brendan has said, it was told to him first by law enforcement. So they may claim it wasn't, but it was, because there are times that they talk to Brendan that there's no recording and there's no record of. So that's how he would know Teresa's items were in a burn barrel, because they told him that. Right, Brandy? It sounds like a threat. That'll be something I should post in Gossip. I'll get that screenshot and post it for you guys to see. And some people freaked out about it. I just thought it was funny. I'm like, oh my God, I was threatened by an Avery, but he may not have even meant it as bad as it came off. I don't know. It was around the time of the rally when the first Manitowoc rally, June rally that I organized, and then Carla gave me the boot just days prior to it. So it was around that time that I got that message from Chuck. So, which was really funny. Yeah. So somebody remind me, and I'll find that screenshot and post it for you guys of my threat from Chuck. I've got tons of screenshots of all this different stuff. And then we also have people send me screenshots of stuff from everywhere too. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff. No questions. I suppose on my other screen, I've got two screens here. I can go over here and look at people that are requesting me get in here. Because I'm sure they're... Any questions yet? Nope. Even though, I look at these, but there's always going to be spies that want to get in places to then, take anything I say or post and bring it back to Carla. But I never care because, again, as I say, I'm an open book. So they can see what I say because I'm saying the truth. Holy cow, this person I'm approving is in 221 groups. Any other questions come in? Yes. Did Brendan ever just say that he didn't do it? In general or to the police? Because, yeah, Brendan has said to everybody that he didn't do it. And he's not capable of it. He really isn't. He's more capable of... No, see, he's not capable of just covering up for other people. He's just not. And there's no way that Brendan is raping and murdering anybody. You really think that kid could have sex with somebody with Stephen watching him? I mean, do you even think I don't even think Brendan at that point was capable of having sex. He's just a boy. And so no. Has has any, hate to say it this way, body parts been found or just her car? Laura, there's been bones that were found, burned bones. And so the testing on the bones say it is consistent with a female in Karen Hallback's maternal line. So Karen Hallback is Teresa's mom. So I don't think that there is any conclusive evidence saying that those bones are Teresa's. Plus, the other thing you have to keep in mind is the person in the lab, Sherry Culhane, isn't credible because she was involved in the first time Stephen was in prison. And then when she is told to test this DNA that later exonerated Stephen, she didn't do that right away either. She let Stephen sit around waiting forever. And then, law enforcement told her, try to place Teresa in Stephen's garage and trailer. She contaminated the evidence. She talked about that on the stand. She was doing, she had students or whatever, and she herself contaminated the specimen by, did she sneeze? I can't remember. So it all should have just been thrown out. So any DNA, basically anything law enforcement says they have is all questionable. Tanya, to anyone. Yes. Stephen has said to anyone and everyone he didn't do it. Yeah, Laura, it all makes me sick too. It's really sad what has happened to Stephen and Brendan. And it happens all the time. And in Brendan's case, you have a lot of people who go, well, he confessed. I sure wouldn't confess to something I didn't do. It happens more often than you think. And these people are trained to do this to you. It's legal for law enforcement to lie to you, and trick you and do things like, even when you see in the room, Stephen or Brendan's in a little room, and so his back is to the door, so it's making it seem like there's no way out because the door's not in your sight line. They're crowding in on him, and they keep him there for hours upon hours, and they do that all the time. So, like in the other case I talked about, Melissa Kaluzinski, she also confessed to a murder she didn't do. And they kept her, and she's got the low IQ as well. They kept her in there for hours and hours and hours. She did not have any representation in there with her. Her father had said, you can't talk to my daughter on the phone. He said, you can't talk to my daughter. I'm getting a lawyer. Stop talking to her. And they did it anyway. And they manipulated her into, okay, just say it was an accident. Just say it was an accident. No, it was an accident and everything will be fine. And, and she's been in prison ever since. So people confess to things they didn't do all the time. Do you know what Zellner's next step will be after the state's response? I'm not a legal expert, and I screw this stuff all the time. Paul Kaluzinski, Melissa, who I was just talking about, he's who I always ask on this stuff, because he's going through it with his daughter on what's the next step, what happens next, how many days is this, and then he tells me, and then I forget. And every time I forget about it. So, no, I don't know what happens after this state response, but Sean, are you still on here? Because I'm sure Sean knows and he could fill you in. Do you think it's possible it was all Scott and that Bobby was pressured by law enforcement because of porn on computer? Asked earlier, but didn't hear answer. Yeah. If that's what Zellner shows, I would believe it. For me, the pieces fit better for it being Bobby that did it and Scott afterwards. But yeah, if the evidence shows Bobby, or Scott is the actual killer, wouldn't be surprised, because I know how he's treated Amy. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. What's the I'm sure that's a typo. Goss about the lady who died from a drug overdose and who looks very similar to Teresa. So that's Carmen Bootwell. I talked about it earlier in this. So Carmen Bootwell is a distant relative of Teresa Halbach, and she died from an alleged drug overdose that same week. And her body was cremated, and they didn't turn that over to her family for quite some time. So it is a theory that the bones that were found were actually Carmen Bootwell's that were planted there. So, but I stated earlier, I don't know a whole lot about the Carmen Bootwell case. I should, but I don't. I have enough trouble keeping up with Stephen, Brendan, Melissa Kaluzinski, and Kent Pellegrini's cases. So I can't keep track of that. But a couple of the Stephen Avery Project moderators are very involved in the Carmen Bootwell case. And they're also, I don't know the Facebook page for it, but they're involved in the Carmen Bootwell Facebook page. And Bootwell is, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. That's how I pronounce it. Boutwell. So just search Carmen Bootwell on Facebook and you can find the group and you'll be able to find out more about that case there. Goss, Aussie slang for gossip. Thank you. Is it Mary or Marie? We have 15 minutes left. Let's see over here if we've got more people asking to get in. Yes, Laura, in the Carmen Bootwell case, it's a suspected drug overdose for on how Carmen died. Did Ryan have an alibi for that day? No. Ryan Hilgast does not have an alibi for that day. If I remember correctly, it was he was home by himself and doesn't have anybody that could vouch for it. But, the police never considered anybody a suspect other than Stephen, so they never looked into that at all. And I have at one point, because I've been a flip-flopper as well, where I thought George Zipper was the killer. Then I thought Ryan Hilgast was. And I've been, on my first viewing of Making a Murderer, I thought it was Scott. Then it was George Zipper once I started looking into evidence. Then it was Ryan Hilgast. Oh, and I thought Ryan Hilgast too because of that creepy way that in that one shot when Ryan and Mike Halbach are talking to a camera, and when they were asked if they had been to the salvage yard or whatever, and they're like, no, and just the way they were looking at each other, it's shady as fuck. Sorry, I've got bad language. But I now think that It's because they helped plant the vehicle there, and that's why they looked shady at that moment. What about married man that Teresa was seeing? So Tammy's done her homework. This is something that you're not supposed to talk about because when somebody is allegedly murdered, you're not supposed to say anything negative about the victim. And I personally am not saying this as a negative against Teresa Halbach. She was a single woman. So what she's doing in her life, she could do in her life. And so, as y'all know, she was a photographer, and she did a little side business of boudoir pictures. And so she did a photo shoot with a married couple. And then she got involved with the married couple. And then the man left his wife for Teresa. He was questioned at one point because everybody's been talked to. They just were never really interrogated like a suspect. So you have that man who was married and that, Teresa may or may not have been part of what broke up that marriage. And then many people don't know that she was also having sex with her roommate, Scott Blodorn. So as just a no strings thing. So people don't ever talk about that because, again, they see it as you're speaking ill of the murdered victim and you're further victimizing the victim. But I'm not doing that because, again, it was Teresa's life. She's single. She can have sex with whoever she wants. I don't really care. The only thing that I care about is all these people should have been looked at as viable suspects, and they were not. Didn't Ryan have her planner, and didn't she tell people she was scared of him? Correct. So Ryan Hilgast had her planner that her boss at the photo place said that she was very on top of everything she was doing. So basically letting you know that she and her day planner would not be apart. So if Teresa is out doing things for Auto Trader, that day planner would have been in her vehicle. And Ryan Hilgast did have that. And that same guy also said that Teresa was supposed to do a photo shoot of a wedding of one of her friends, and she didn't want to do it because Ryan was going to be there. I don't know if afraid was ever something that was used, just that she didn't want to be around him. How many times have I watched Making a Murderer? Probably 5 or 6 times. But not the whole thing. I have a hard time watching Brendan's interrogations because I get really, really mad. So I don't like watching that. So I'll like skip over those chapters. And I'm in the process of watching it again. I think I'm on the 8th episode. So it's like my 6th or 7th time watching them. And I don't like when people say that I'm me, or not just me, but anybody who believes in these guys' innocence, that we were just convinced by a one-sided documentary or show. They don't even call it a documentary. They'll call it a show. First of all, the documentarians asked everybody to take part of it. The Halbachs, Ken Kratz, Griesbach, everybody was asked to take part in this. They said no. So that's why you see in Making a Murderer when they were talking to the press after a day in court or whatever. That was the only way the documentarians had to show that side of the story. So they can't put in their documentary what they don't have. If the people aren't going to talk to them, they can't put that in there. So that's first of all. Second of all, I've talked about this all the time, but people are new. I watched Making a Murderer the weekend Netflix released it. So I knew nothing about the case, nothing about it. So I was open for whatever. I was not slanted one way or the other. And then when I was done watching it, I was like, holy shit. So this happened how many years ago? Where is the case now? So I started looking things up and going everywhere I could to try and get all the information. That's how I first came across Skip Top, because that was from Reddit. On Reddit, they were asking there was a fundraiser to get the court documents. And so I donated money towards that. It was only $50, but I gave money towards that. So you'll even see if you go to StephenAveryCase.org and you go into, I haven't been there in a while, but I think there's a tab for donors or thank you or whatever. You'll see my name on there, that I donated money. So, and then I just, as they say, fell down the rabbit hole and researched to look into this of what wasn't in this documentary, what's going on and where is it now. I take offense to when people are going to say that I'm just swayed by a one-sided show. I looked into everything. I don't know the Averys. I don't know Stephen. So if the evidence said he was guilty, I would say, oh my God, this guy is guilty. You know, just like I say about the staircase guy when talking about that. He's guilty. I know I'm supposed to be an advocate for the wrongfully accused. That doesn't mean I think everybody who's accused of a crime is really innocent and that all law enforcement are shady. Because it's not. And staircase guy is guilty. He killed both those women. So I don't have any loyalty to Stephen or anything like that. This is what the evidence, in my opinion, shows. Stephen is innocent. And Brent. I cannot even believe that they were convicted. Too many suspects. Just think, people, this could be one of us being falsely accused. Free Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. Well, and that's why one of the hashtags is, we all live on Avery Road. This could happen to anyone. It's horrible. It seems more likely that it was Ryan. Wasn't he also the one who deleted her phone messages? Did she have two phones? Yes. Ryan Hilgas admits that he deleted some of her messages. So, but I again now attribute things to that they helped frame Stephen. So I think there could be messages that were deleted that is showing that she was going to zippers after Stephen. So did she have two phones? Yeah, I know I've heard that she had two phones. Whether or not that's fact or not, I don't recall. But she had a Palm Pilot thing too. Chris, staircase guy is guilty. Yep, staircase guy is guilty. But I did watch, anybody watching that Final Defense or First Defense that's on ABC? And so it had the Darlie Routier story or whatever it was. And that was a thing that I remember when that case happened. And I've just always assumed that she was guilty. And now that I watch it, I was like, holy shit, she might not be guilty. But there's plenty of cases where I go guilty. Casey Anthony, guilty. Did Teresa have another appointment after the appointment on Avery Place? The George Zipperer stop was actually scheduled after Stephen. And when you listen to, go to StephenAveryCase.org and go listen to the police recordings from when the case when they were first investigating, very first investigating, you will hear, I can't remember what officer it is, talking about going to Zippers because went to Zippers after Avery's. So when law enforcement first got on this case, they were saying Zippers was the last stop, and then that got flip-flopped. Another one, so guilty. I heard phone call that Teresa's last stop was Zippers. Yeah. So, and that was on my first trip up to the salvage yard. That was when I thought it was Zipper. So I actually went to the Zipper house and took pictures of the house and timed my drive from the salvage yard to the Zippers. And yeah. I've never understood why Ryan and her brother were trying to get into her cell phone records. Did they ever say why? I see. There's so much, after following this case for so long, I knew stuff and then forget stuff. I believe initially it's because they're saying they got into it because they were just trying to find her, of why they were looking into her phone records. So I think that's the reason that was given. Did you watch the Scott Peterson documentary? What did you think about that one? I was so sure of his guilt at one time, I would have injected him myself. After that documentary, I'm not so sure. I'm with you, Brandy. And I know people hate when people say that Scott Peterson could be innocent. But after watching that, it really did. Yeah, it has me going, maybe he's not. But I don't think it's Edward Wayne Edwards, though. If anybody has ever watched the Ed Edwards stuff, where the one guy is trying to say Ed Edwards killed anybody and everybody, it's not Ed Edwards. Just like he has also said Ed Edwards for Teresa Hallback. No, it's not Ed Edwards. But yeah, Scott Peterson, I'm on the fence. Drew Peterson, if you've ever followed the Drew Peterson case, and that's from my neck of the woods here, that's just a town over from me. And actually, my mother went to grade school, junior high, high school with him. They're the same age. Drew Peterson is guilty, guilty, guilty. He killed both his wives. Or two of his wives. One survived. I was shocked too. I went into it thinking I was going to be so mad the whole way through, but oh my God, the media doesn't tell us all. Well, Brandy, that's what Making a Murderer did for me. Is I've always been interested in true crime, watching all those 48 hours and all that stuff. And I always took everything at face value on what I saw on the TV show. How dumb am I? And so then after watching Making a Murderer, you're like, now I have to reassess, what actually is true and what's not. What are we being shown and what's edited? I don't know. It's crazy. Thoughts on Dietering wanting to speak with the photographer who took a certain pic for the paper with Stephen Brendan. Don't know any more details. So that was a picture taken of them when they were up in Crivets, which is something else that I've said before too. Going so Brendan and Stephen just raped a girl and murdered her, and she's smoldering in a fire in the yard. So what do? They travel up north to their vacation cabin. That makes no sense. So it's a picture that was taken of Brendan and Stephen when they were at the cabin in Crivets. And then something in there had said too that the photographer was telling them the picture was taken days before it actually went in the paper. But I'm not sure what exactly all that is trying to say. Brandy, Drew is guilty of sin. Mm-hmm. done podcasts other than Serial. And then I've thought at times maybe, should do a podcast myself, but I don't know anything about it. So Sword and Scale, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I only did Serial. So we are at 6:33 now. So we are at the end of this chat. That covers today. I don't know the next time I'm going to do a Facebook Live. And then I might do one from Stephen Avery Project. The reason I've been doing these here in Gossip is because this is where, if anybody wants to talk about the drama bullshit, like, the shit the family accuses me of, or, just that kind of crap, I don't like to put that on Stephen Avery Project, because the Stephen Avery Project page is for Stephen. And so the bullshit of Carla saying this about me and Scott saying that shouldn't be on there. That has nothing to do with Stephen's case. So when I do Facebook Live on Stephen Avery Project, I don't want the drama shit involved. So I did this one here because of Barb just admitting recently that I did give her the money that I've been accused these last 2 years of stealing, and just all miscellaneous stuff from the family. So that's why it's been done in Gossip, because this is the proper place for that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm scanning through these to make sure there isn't another. So, so in conclusion, remember that I'm starting to do the Stephen Avery Project Twitter, which is Bravery. Bravery is something that Curtis Bussey came up with, when Curtis Bussey is who started Stephen Avery Project. And if you didn't know what Bravery is, it's because BR stands for Brendan and then Avery. So that's why it's Bravery. Brendan Avery. So the Twitter is Bravery SAP. I did not name Stephen Avery Project. For everybody that likes to make fun of Stephen Avery Project's initials, spell SAP. That wasn't me that named that. So I'll try to start doing stuff on Twitter. The gossip shit will still be post only in this group. And if we do get the state's papers, I'll write up a recap of that. And then I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live on tentatively Wednesday, 4 p.m. Central, with Paul Kaluzinski on the Melissa Kaluzinski case. That will be in their Facebook group called Justice for Melissa. And Paul is going to have Melissa on the phone, and people will be able to ask Melissa questions, but not about her case. So that's the next Facebook Live I'm doing for sure. So, all right, there's a new Reddit page called Convicting a Murderer coming soon. All right. Oh, I got a car pulled in my driveway. I was going to go, but Convicting a Murderer. We on Stephen Avery Project will not be promoting that piece of shit. In Gossip, we can discuss it to rip it apart. But we are not promoting, because Stephen Avery Project is the crown jewel in Making a Murderer world. The Stephen Avery Project page has 132,000 people on it. So it has more people than all the other Making a Murderer groups combined. So everybody always wants Stephen Avery Project to post about this or that or the other. Like somebody wrote a book, I'm not going to say who, and then told me to put it up on Stephen Avery Project. And Stephen told me, no, don't put it there, so, and I didn't want to put it there to begin with, but it's Stephen's decision. So I did ask him and he said no. And so then that guy threatened me, and he called me a cunt and said he was going to punch me in the face. Um, because people they're desperate, and they want Stephen Avery Project to promote it because it's 132,000 people. Convicting a murderer is made by guilters for guilters and has guilters in it. So guilters will try and say, oh, this is going to have all the evidence and blah, blah, blah. No, it's trying to say that Stephen and Brendan are guilty. Fuck them. I'm not putting it on Stephen Avery Project. Period. End of story. Just like we won't have anything to do with a Reddit page convicting a murderer. The only Reddit page I go to is the one that's TikTok Manitowoc, which also, if you're on Twitter, you should follow TikTok on Twitter. Whoever that is brilliant. I love that guy or girl on Twitter. They're amazing. Let me keep scrolling down, making sure. Right. Oh, Convicting a Murderer has Ken Kratz in it, Mike Griesbach in it, Richard Donovan, who's the guy that used to say they were innocent, but then when he wasn't getting love and attention from the innocent people, then he switched over to saying guilty because he's an attention whore and a big old pussy. He really hates me because I called him a pussy. So Richard Donovan is in it too. So no, we're not going to have anything to do with it on Stephen Avery Project. We will, well, and I'm not even going to watch it because no. But in MaM Gossip, anybody who watches it or whatever, if it actually comes out, you're more than welcome to discuss it in here. But if it was posted on Stephen Avery Project, we'll delete it because, again, no, we're not having anything that says the guys are guilty. We are supporters. So, all right, I'm gonna end it now. Thank you, everybody who tuned in while we were live. For those of you who will watch it afterwards, if you're posting questions in it afterwards, tag me, Jax West, in it if you're asking a question you want me to answer, because I'm not going to necessarily know that you're asking me a question in there. So tag me, or if you want to talk to Amy McGlinchey, you can tag her, or tag Stephen Avery Project, and one of us are the moderators, because I've told you, I say it over and over, but the moderators of Stephen Avery Project are are way more knowledgeable on the case than I am, so they can answer it. Convicting a Murderer is not already out. Speaking of crazy eyes, somebody just told me today that Orange is the New Black is back on Netflix, so that's another thing I got to make time for, is watch all of Orange is the New Black. So, all right, I'm out. Thank you, everybody, and we will talk soon.